In order to create our production company and think of the different logos and fonts that we would use on our own production company, I've done some research on other film distribution and production companies and looking into the fonts and logos that they use and the colour schemes they also use. Okay, so the first one seen here is 20th Century Fox. The writing is in gold, which symbolises kind of like authority and a royal kind of colour. The use of the blue and golden sky kind of reflects the idea of films that can be seen during the day and at night time, as it's kind of the blue part of the sky shows films that could be shown in daytime, perhaps like kids' films or for a younger audience. And as the sky moves towards the bottom of the screen, we see that it kind of turns more goldeny and of deeper earthy colours, which shows the idea of films that can be shown at night time, perhaps for an older audience, such as like horror and thriller genre or film noir films. This kind of giving off the idea that their production company is actually aimed towards all different types of audiences and not just one specific age or gender. The use of the strobe lights that come out the side of the production company logo and they shoot upwards kind of represents a kind of cinematic experience and how it kind of makes you feel, and the general like a kind of celebrity and famous kind of effect that it gives off, and shows you kind of going into like a different kind of world. So you're stepping into a different world as an audience to go and see a film, and it kind of makes you feel kind of quite authoritative and very superior. And by having these also kind of like when you watch the production company itself, actually they kind of move around and kind of shoot at the sign at the logo itself, giving off the idea of kind of a very sophisticated edge to it and showing that it's kind of aimed towards a more higher end market, etc. Also, by having the title and logo of the production company in the middle, you're immediately drawn to that as the audience. You look at it first, you read what it says, and then you kind of look around. So this immediately is something that I think would work really well for our production company logo, as it kind of you want to draw the audience in and read the name and remember the production company and make it memorable for the audience, and then look around and see what else its surrounding is. By not using kind of gender generalising colour such as blunt pink or blue, it kind of shows it's aimed towards a wider audience and not just one, so it doesn't single out any type of gender. And overall, I think it's kind of a very effective production company logo, and use of font is nice as well because it's quite simple to read, it's not difficult, and the way it's kind of written in different sizes and like widths and heights, it keeps us interested. Like you look at it and all of it stands out, there's not one part that you miss out, and by having it bold it stands out on the page, and it's just quite a blunt writing and it's not flowy, so it doesn't make it difficult, and it fits with all different types of films also. The next we can see is for Focus Features, which is actually the production company we've chosen to use for our film. I think this is a very good font and logo due to its kind of easy, non-complex approach, as there's simply just writing in the middle, and the focus is in kind of a bolder, bigger writing, and the features underneath is in smaller writing, but it's still just as effective, and the way the letters are spaced out makes it easier to read, so it's easier for a younger audience to read as well as an older audience. The use of the yellow colour creates kind of a happy and joyful mood and gives off kind of the effect and provokes happiness within the audience as they look at it, so this is always good as it makes an audience want to go and see it. The use of the yellow and blue behind it is a very calming effect on the audience, so it makes them feel very relaxed as they're looking at this, as it's very flowy and it's very slow, and when it moves it's not all quick and in your face, it's very kind of quiet and quaint, which I think works really well because it has a very nice effect as the audience watches it. The use of the circles in the background being blurred also I think works well because it helps the Focus Features text to stand out more, and the use of the circles behind are just kind of like bubbles, and it looks very very relaxed and subtle, and I think generally it works really well. I like the effect it has of not showing too much, not being too over the top. It's just very not about the production, it's all about the production company's name and what they do, not necessarily focusing too much on how their appearance is. and I think that would work really well for our film. The next one you can see is for Grayscale, which is a television and film production company. I think it's really good in the sense that the title of the production company links to the actual outcome of it itself and the picture you can see underneath because it's a scale, so I think this works really well. But I'm not too keen on the fact that it's all grey and it's quite bland and not very exciting to look at. It doesn't, as a member of the audience, if I saw that, I just kind of read it and think, oh okay, you don't get drawn to it, you don't want to look up what other films they've got, or it's not easily recognisable. And kind of grey kind of doesn't really give the audience a very happy feeling when looking at it. It kind of makes them feel a bit down and a bit depressed, whereas the colours that we use in 20th Century Fox and Focus Features that we've seen so far have been more uplifting for an audience member. But then again, I like the way it's subtle and it's not over the top. You have the grayscale background and the title and a little picture of a scale at the bottom, and that's simply it. And I think it's effective in the sense that it's not too over the top, like Focus Features was. The writing also is very easy to read and very clear, and the way it moves from kind of a darker grey to a lighter grey, almost like whitish and silver, as it goes from grey to scale. I think this works well also, as it kind of shows an actual increase in grayscale as it would be when editing something, so I think it's very effective. The next one that I've seen is for Columbia. This one, I think, when you look at it, you immediately are drawn to the woman in the centre of the picture and not necessarily to the title of the actual production company. So this is something I think we need to steer clear of, because I think you get distracted by what's going on in the middle. You kind of forget and don't really recognise the name that's above it. But the woman, I think, makes the film seem as though they're aimed towards a more generalised female audience, as she's kind of draped in very seductive clothing, so males are a bit like, when they're looking at it, unsure. But the fact that she's wearing a nude dress kind of doesn't sterilise her as a womanly woman, and the use of the blue drapes around her shoulders kind of adds a more masculine edge to her, so she's not a typical female. The use of the sky behind adds the effect of kind of being open to all different types of films and leaves the audience kind of feeling refreshed when looking at it, because it's not just a bold, a bland colour. It's very kind of bold and subtle with the use of like golden, light blue and light pink earthy tones. So I think this works really well because it kind of creates a softer approach. And the Columbia writing itself, I think, is quite effective because it's almost like 3D, so this immediately stands out when you look at it and when you read it. And by having it in kind of like a bronzy golden colour, it makes it kind of seem quite royal and makes it seem kind of old-fashioned-esque, and I think this actually works really well because it shows that they've got a lot of experience in filmmaking. The use of the spaced out letters also, I think, works well because it makes it easier to read for a younger audience. The use of the beaming coming out of the U on the Columbia, I think, also works really well because it's kind of like a beam of light, like showing it keeps the audience interested, like you see that beam of light and you remember it. And so I think overall it works really well, but the fact of the woman being the centre, I don't think I'd like to have this on my production company logo personally. The next production company you can see is Lionsgate. I'm a fan of this one because I like the way it's very simple and non-complex, just as Focus Features and Grayscale were. I like the fact that the writing is in kind of a navy black tone, and it's very simple, very easy to read as it stands out greatly against the white and kind of grey background. So I think immediately you look at the writing and the text, you realise exactly what production company it is, and it's memorable. The use of the sky around it also adds kind of an open edge that open to all different types of films, although the fact that it's in kind of dark colours kind of generalises them towards a more horror, thriller or film noir genre, as it seems like a darker edge to films. But then again, I think they could perhaps change this around if they were to do children's films and make it brighter colours. There's nothing to stop them from doing that, just as for us as well. So I think overall I think it's very effective, and I like the way it's simple and is literally just a picture and text, and I think this works really well because it's not too fancy. The next one you can see is for Paramount Pictures. This, I think, is a very classic it's been around for a very long time, so it's been adapted over the years, but I like the way they've kept it the same throughout, so you always remember it being this way, and it's very memorable in a person's mind. The use of the high mountain shows the peak and the climax that all films will have, so it shows it's all going to be dramatic and very interesting for the audience to watch. There is a nice use of both pink and blue lighting within the sky and reflections on the mountains, which kind of doesn't generalise one specific gender of audience. It shows to do all the different sexes of genders, such as male and female, and it shows it's all aimed towards mixed films, and there's no generalising and dominating gender. The text is flowy and looks kind of old-fashioned, and it's a very nice font, and it's nice to look at, but I don't think it particularly stands out on the page. You're immediately drawn to the stars that go around it, but not particularly to the text itself, so I think perhaps maybe having it larger would work better, but I think the font's nice, it just needs to be bigger and bolder. The use of the white text symbolises innocence and purity, showing that they're not just aimed towards a older audience, it's also for a younger audience also. The next one you can see is for Spyglass Entertainment. I like this one, but I'm not sure on the stillness of it. The black background and then with the picture in the middle, I think looks like a photograph and a photo frame. So I think it's kind of quite old-fashioned and not very up-to-date and modern. So I think if they went on to change this and develop it further to fit in with the modern era, I think it could possibly be very good. The use of the Spyglass Entertainment writing in white stands out really well against the black background and contrasts the innocence and the darker side of all films. The use of the blue in the middle then adds kind of the calming effect, so it kind of shows that although there's these very blunt colours and two different sides and two different genres of film, you then have the effect of the middle one and it makes it seem more relaxed. The use of the figure also links back to the title as he's holding a spyglass, so I think that's a nice way of linking the two together, so it makes it more memorable, because when you think of it by having something that's very similar, I think this is very effective for the audience to look at. But overall, I'm not particularly sure if we would use this as a massive influence for our production company, due to the way I think it's just too old-fashioned and not up-to-date enough, but I like the idea of linking the name to the picture in it itself. The next one you can see is for Universal Studios and Pictures. I personally really like this one, as I think it involves all the different elements and brings them together really well. You have the nighttime sky and space kind of picture around the background, which is black with little white bits that look like stars, so I think this links back to the title, but also by having the earth behind it adds a bit more detail, and having it beaming gives off the effect that is kind of an out of life experience, out of the normal. By going to go and see their films, you're going to experience something that you've never experienced before, and I like this idea how it gives the audience that kind of feeling. The use of the blue and for the background of the earth also works really well because it contrasts against the black of the background, and by having the writing in kind of a 3D font, I think works really well because it makes it stand out more, and the letters are quite separated but not too much that it looks too much, so I think this works well. The use of the white and the golden also add kind of a happy vibe and a more relaxed vibe to the audience as they look at it, so I think this is something we'd like to use on ours. I think the 3D effect and the shadowing behind it also works really well. The beam that comes from the earth, I think, is very effective due to it looking realistic and like an out of the ordinary experience as they're kind of aiming for within this. So I like how they've linked the picture, the text and the background of it all together, and I think this is the major one that I'd like to influence our production company logo and fonts. And the final one you can see is for Warner Bros. Entertainment. I like this one because it links the W and the B that are in the shield in the centre of the screen, links to the Warner Bros. As it's the initials for it. So I think it's a nice way of bringing the two together. But then I'm not sure, as it doesn't really, although it's very memorable, it doesn't say a lot about the production company itself, doesn't give you too much information. By having the sky in the back, although it looks nice, it's kind of random, whereas all the other ones seem to kind of link together. By having a sky and then a shield in front of it doesn't, I feel, work particularly well. And by having the blue of the sky behind it and then the blue of the shield, it kind of blends in together, so it's not that bold, which I think could work better if it were to be bigger or perhaps more spaced out or a different coloured background. But I like, again, the use of the gold and the blue, which most of the other production company logos and fonts seem to have the same idea, as I think it adds an effect of kind of like authority but also a calmness as well. So it's kind of like a royal experience, but it's a very calming experience as well by going to see their film. So overall, I think all of these have been really helpful in researching, and hopefully will give us, perhaps mix them all together, all the different good elements of them to create our production company.